Long before dinosaurs stomped across the land, the oceans were filled with creatures that seemed more like nightmares than animals. One of the strangest of them all was Opabinia. Imagine an animal about the size of your hand, around 3 inches long, crawling along the seafloor over 500 million years ago. At first glance, it looks like something out of science fiction. It had 5 eyes sitting on top of its head, scanning in every direction, and a long tube-shaped mouth that stretched forward like a tiny vacuum hose. At the end of that tube was a claw that could grab worms and pull them straight into its circular mouth. We still don't know exactly how Opabinia lived its life. We know it had a soft body and flaps along its sides that probably helped it glide gently through the water. Some think it spent most of its time scuttling across the sea bottom, poking into the sand with that strange hose-like snout, looking for small prey hiding just beneath the surface. With 5 eyes, it would have had a nearly full view of its surroundings, which was useful in an ocean full of predators. When fossils of Opabinia were first studied in the early 1900s, the paleontologists laughed at the reconstruction because it looked so bizarre. They actually thought it was a mistake. But no, this was real. A 5-eyed, vacuum-mouthed animal once truly lived on Earth. The strange thing about Opabinia is that even though it seems so alien, it may be related to the ancestors of modern arthropods, like crabs and insects. In other words, some tiny piece of this oddball's design is still walking the planet today, and we'll take a look at some of those later. But if you think Opabinia is strange, just wait until you meet its even weirder neighbor, Hallucigenia. If Opabinia looked strange, then its neighbor Hallucigenia was even more bewildering. This was a tiny creature, about 1.5 inches long, that lived more than 500 million years ago. At first glance, it looks like something drawn by a child with a wild imagination. Hallucigenia had a long, thin body that looked like a walking noodle, covered with spindly legs that ended in tiny claws. But that was only the beginning of its strangeness. Sticking straight up from its back were sharp spines, as if the little animal was wearing armor made of toothpicks. These spines were probably there to protect it from larger predators, like Anomalocaris that cruised the ancient seas. On its head, it had a simple round mouth and 2 beady eyes, giving it a blank, almost cartoon-like expression. For years, people studying this creature were not even sure which way was up. Early reconstructions actually had it upside down, walking on its spines with its legs waving in the air. Only much later did researchers realize they'd been looking at the creature completely backward. Hallucigenia gets its name because it looks like an hallucination come to life. Even today, it's hard to imagine how something so odd could survive in the oceans of the Cambrian period. Yet this fragile worm managed to live and thrive among the bizarre collection of animals that first experimented with body plans we barely recognize today. Looking at Hallucigenia is like peering into an alien world where nature was still trying out its first drafts. But if you think a spiky worm was strange, the Cambrian oceans had something even more terrifying waiting in the wings. Let's take a look at the shrimp from hell, Anomalocaris. The Cambrian oceans were filled with tiny and defenseless creatures, but among them lurked a predator that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi horror film. This was Anomalocaris, the abnormal shrimp. It could grow to nearly 3 feet long, making it a giant compared to most of the animals living at the time. Anomalocaris had a strange body built for swimming, with flaps running along its sides that let it glide gracefully through the water like a manta ray. At the front of its head were 2 long, spiny arms that curled inward like giant claws. These arms were its hunting tools. It would sweep through the water, grab soft-bodied prey, and funnel them straight into its circular mouth. That mouth was ringed with plates that looked almost like a pineapple slice, except these plates were sharp and hard, able to crush anything unlucky enough to be caught. For years, fossils of Anomalocaris were misidentified as separate creatures. The mouth was thought to be a jellyfish, and the arms were thought to be the tails of shrimp. It wasn't until much later that researchers pieced them all together and realized they belonged to a single, terrifying predator. To the smaller creatures of the Cambrian seas, Anomalocaris must have been a monster. With large compound eyes, it could spot prey from distance, then swoop in with speed and precision. It ruled the oceans in a time when life was still experimenting with body shapes and defenses. But the Cambrian seas didn't only produce hunters, they also produced some of the strangest filter feeders to ever exist. Imagine something like Anomalocaris, but designed to strain tiny food from the water instead of attacking prey. Meet Thomisiocharys. If Anomalocaris was the shark of the Cambrian seas, then its relative, Thomisiocharys, was something much stranger. This animal looked similar in shape, with a body built for swimming and large eyes to spot movement. But instead of spiny arms for grabbing prey, Thomisiocharys had long comb-like appendages that spread out like fans. These strange tools were lined with rows of tiny bristles. As Thomisiocharys swam through the water, it would sweep those arms wide, filtering clouds of microscopic food from the seawater. It worked almost like the baleen of a whale, except this was over 500 million years ago. Thomisiocharys was one of the first known animals to try this strategy, turning away from the hunt and living off the invisible abundance of plankton. It grew to nearly 2 feet long, which made it one of the largest filter feeders of its time. Instead of terror, it inspired awe. Imagine a creature that looked like an alien swimming gracefully with fan-shaped arms, drifting through the Cambrian seas in silence. This experiment shows how early nature was with trying new ideas. Predators and prey were not only forms on the menu. Even in the earliest oceans, life found a way to feed in ways that seem almost futuristic. But as the oceans changed and new ages arrived, other strange animals appeared. This time crawling on land and water. From the swamps of the Carboniferous came one of the strangest animals ever discovered. A creature so mysterious that everyone still argues about what it even was. Let's meet the Tully Monster. In the dark swamps of Illinois, about 300 million years ago, lived a creature that looks like it came out of someone's imagination. This animal is called Tully Monstrum, but most people know it as the Tully Monster. Its fossils were discovered in the 1950s, and since then, nobody's ever been able to fully agree on what it really was. The Tully Monster was about 1 foot long, with a soft body and a tail shaped like a fin, but the truly bizarre part was its head. Instead of jaws, it had a long, thin snout, like a stalk, ending in a claw-like mouth filled with small, sharp teeth. It also had eyes that sat on the ends of a rigid bar sticking out sideways from its head, giving it a comical but creepy stare. Researchers studying this creature have argued for decades whether this animal was a worm, a mollusk, or even a primitive fish. Some studies suggest it might have been related to lampreys, those eel-like creatures with circular sucker mouths. Others think it belongs to a group of animals that no longer exist at all. The Tully Monster is so strange that Illinois actually declared it their official state fossil. But even with thousands of fossils, its true identity remains a puzzle. Some mysteries of prehistory may never be fully solved. From the swamps of Illinois, we now turn to another bizarre amphibian-like creature with a body designed so odd it looks completely unreal. Let's look at the boomerang-headed Diplocaulus. About 250 million years ago, rivers and lakes were home to a strange amphibian that looked like something designed for a cartoon. This was Diplocaulus, an animal about 3 feet long, shaped almost like a giant salamander. What made it so unforgettable was the shape of its skull. Diplocaulus had a head that flared outward in two huge extensions, giving it the shape of a giant boomerang. These wings of bone made its head wider than the rest of its body. Many have puzzled over what purpose this strange shape served. Some think it worked like hydrofoils, helping Diplocaulus steer and glide smoothly through the water. Others believe it made the animal harder for predators to swallow, almost like wearing a built-in shield. Its body was otherwise ordinary, with 4 legs and a long tail, but that boomerang head gave it a completely alien look. Fossils show that Diplocaulus was widespread, living in North America and Africa, which means this odd design was successful enough to last millions of years. Imagine seeing one in a shallow river, paddling along with that wide head cutting through the water like wings. It would have looked both comical and unsettling, a reminder that nature often chooses shapes that seem impossible. But Diplocaulus was only one of many bizarre creatures of its age. In the same time period, there lived a bulky reptile covered in horn-like growths, looking more like a monster from a fantasy tale than a real animal. Enter Estamenosaucus. During the Permian period, about 270 million years ago, the land was home to a strange reptile-like animal called Estamenosaucus. Its name means crowned crocodile, and it truly looked like some ancient king of beasts. This animal could grow to about 13 feet long, with a heavy body and a flat head, but the most bizarre feature was the crown of horns that sprouted from its skull. It had thick, bony, antler-like growths jutting from its cheeks and above its eyes, giving it a twisted, intimidating look. Unlike a modern deer, these horns were not delicate. They were massive, bony structures that made Estamenosaucus look armored and almost demonic. No one is even sure what they were used for. They may have been for display, for fighting rivals, or perhaps for defense against predators. What makes it stranger is that Estamenosaucus was not a fierce carnivore. Fossil evidence suggests it was a herbivore, feeding on plants with its blunt teeth. Imagine a giant, horned, reptile-like cow lumbering across the Permian landscape, chewing ferns and moss while wearing a headpiece that would make any monster designer jealous. It's another reminder that nature does not always design creatures for efficiency. Sometimes it creates shapes that seem designed only to shock and surprise us millions of years later. But not every bizarre creature of the Permian looked threatening. Some look like lumbering jokes, carrying strange proportions that make us wonder how they even survived. One of the strangest of all was Cotylorhynchus. If you thought Estamenosaucus was strange, wait until you see Cotylorhynchus. Living around 270 million years ago, this animal looked like it was designed with mismatched parts. It had a massive round body, almost like a bloated barrel, yet sitting on top was a ridiculously tiny head that looked far too small to belong. Cotylorhynchus could reach nearly 20 feet long, making it one of the largest animals of its time. Its belly was so enormous that researchers believe it was packed with organs for digesting tough plants. It waddled slowly across the land, probably grazing on low vegetation like a prehistoric cow. Its tiny head had small peg-like teeth, just enough to nip off plant material before sending it down to that enormous stomach. The strangest thing was how unbalanced it looks. Imagine a reptile with the body of a giant balloon and the head of a turtle. Fossil reconstructions show a creature that was bulky and awkward, yet somehow successful enough to survive for millions of years. Cotylorhynchus reminds us that survival is not about beauty or speed, but about filling an ecological niche. As comical as it may seem today, this lumbering giant once thrived on the Permian plains. But as the Permian gave way to the age of dinosaurs, even stranger shapes emerged. One reptile developed a mouth so unusual that it looks like a hammerhead crossed with a vacuum cleaner. Let's meet Atopodentatus. About 242 million years ago, during the Triassic period, a reptile swam through the shallow seas of what is now China. Its name was a Topidentatus, which literally means unusual teeth, and unusual is putting it lightly. A Topidentatus grew about 10 feet long and had a body shaped for swimming, with flippers and a long tail. But the most remarkable feature was its skull. Its mouth extended outward in a wide, flat shape that looked like a hammerhead. Along its jaws were rows of strange, comb-like teeth that formed a kind of rake. It's believed that a Topidentatus used this bizarre mouth to scrape algae off rocks, then strained the material with its teeth, keeping the food and spitting out the water. In other words, it was a giant underwater lawnmower, vacuuming the sea floor in search of plants. For years, paleontologists were baffled by its skull. At first, they thought its teeth formed a kind of saw blade, which made it look like a predator. Only after more complete fossils were studied did they realize it was a gentle herbivore, with a feeding method unlike anything alive today. A Topidentatus shows how creative evolution could be in the recovery after Earth's worst mass extinction. When life came back, it came back with bizarre experiments, some of which seemed too strange to be real. But a Topidentatus was only the beginning. In the later age of dinosaurs, one long-necked sauropod developed a mouth so peculiar that it's sometimes called the dinosaur with a vacuum cleaner face. Meet Nigersaurus. In the Sahara Desert of Niger, paleontologists uncovered one of the strangest dinosaurs ever found. Its name is Nigersaurus, and it lived about 110 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. Though it belonged to the same family as giants, like Brachiosaurus, this dinosaur had a design unlike any other. Nigersaurus grew about 30 feet long, which is small for a sauropod. But what set it apart was its skull and teeth. Its mouth was wide and straight across, almost like the front of a vacuum cleaner. Inside were over 500 teeth packed tightly together, designed for cropping plants close to the ground. Unlike most long-necked dinosaurs that reached high into trees, Nigersaurus kept its head low, mowing down ferns and low shrubs like a living lawn trimmer. Its jaws were so unusual that for years no one was sure how they fit together. The teeth were constantly replaced, meaning the dinosaur had a lifetime supply, always ready to chew through tough plants. With a long neck, short body, and that bizarre vacuum-shaped skull, Nigersaurus looked more like a strange experiment than a graceful giant. This odd dinosaur reminds us that even familiar groups like sauropods were full of surprises. Some grew tall, others grew massive, and one grew a mouth made for constant grazing. But if you think Nigersaurus was odd, another dinosaur looked even stranger. Imagine a massive creature with a hump on its back, claws like knives, and a duckbill-like face. This was Deinocheirus. For decades, Deinocheirus was a mystery. In the 1960s, paleontologists discovered only its giant clawed arms, each nearly 8 foot long. With no other bones, it was hard to imagine what the rest of the animal looked like. Some thought it must have been a fearsome predator. Then, in 2014, more complete fossils were uncovered, and the truth was even stranger. Deinocheirus was about 36 feet long and weighed over 6 tons. It had a humped back, supported by tall spines that made it look almost camel-like. Its arms were still enormous, ending in long claws, but its head was small and shaped like a duck's bill. Instead of a carnivore, it was a gentle giant that fed mostly on plants and maybe small fish. Its wide body and strange proportions made it look clumsy, but it was clearly successful. Fossil evidence even shows it may have swallowed stones to help grind plants in its stomach, much like modern birds. Deinocheirus proves that prehistoric life often defies our expectations. What started as a terrifying mystery turned out to be an awkward but fascinating creature, combining features from many different animals into one strange package. And yet the experiments of nature did not stop there. Another Triassic reptile carried ornaments on its back that looked like feathery decorations, leading some to believe it was an early hint at the future of birds. Let's look at Longusquama. Travel back 235 million years to the Triassic period, and you'll find one of the strangest little reptiles to ever climb a tree. Its name was Longusquama, and though it was only about 6 inches long, it carried features that still puzzle everyone who has seen the creature. The body of Longusquama was fairly typical of a small lizard-like reptile, but sprouting from its back were long feather-like scales, each one shaped like a plant or a decorative plume. These ornaments were far longer than the animal's body, fanning out behind it like a prehistoric display. What were they for? Some think they were used to show off, perhaps to attract mates or intimidate rivals. Others believe the scales might have helped the animal glide between trees, acting like primitive wings. Either way, Longusquama was a visual spectacle in its time. Its bizarre back plumes have also fueled debate about the origin of birds. Some paleontologists once thought Longusquama might be related to early birds because of its feather-like structures. Most now agree it was not a bird ancestor, but its strange appearance shows just how many evolutionary experiments were taking place in the Triassic. Longusquama reminds us that small creatures can be just as mysterious as the giants. Even in the shadows of larger predators, it stood out with its flamboyant display. But the Triassic forests were not the only home of bizarre creatures. Millions of years later, South America would host a frog so enormous and fearsome that it would be nicknamed the Frog from Hell. Meet Beelzebufo. If you think frogs are harmless, Beelzebufo will change your mind. Known as the devil frog, this prehistoric amphibian lived about 70 million years ago in Madagascar and was the largest frog ever discovered. Beelzebufo grew over 16 inches long and weighed more than 10 pounds. That might not sound huge, but for a frog, it was enormous. Its body was squat and muscular, with a massive mouth that made up nearly a third of its head. It's believed that it had a bite force as powerful as some modern predators, strong enough to crush small bones. What did it eat? Likely anything it could fit into its mouth. That could have included insects, small reptiles, and even baby dinosaurs. Picture a toad-like monster lurking in the swamps, waiting to ambush anything that wandered too close. Modern horned frogs, sometimes called Pac-Man frogs, give us a clue to how these creatures probably hunted. They sit motionless until prey passes by, then lunge forward with a devastating bite. Beelzebufo probably used the same technique, only on a much larger and more terrifying scale. It might look like a comical giant to us now, but to smaller animals in its environment, this frog was a nightmare. Just when you thought you'd seen the strangest creatures of the prehistoric world, here comes something truly unbelievable. More than 120 million years ago in the lakes of what is now China, a tiny aquatic reptile called Hyphalosaurus lived a quiet life. Normally it grew to about 20 inches long with a long neck, a slender body, and paddle-like limbs that made it a graceful swimmer. But one extraordinary fossil revealed something no one expected. This particular Hyphalosaurus had not one head, but two. Perfectly preserved in stone, the fossil shows two long necks sprouting from a single body, ending in two distinct heads. This condition is called axial bifurcation, where an embryo begins to split into twins but never fully separates. Instead of two individuals, you get one creature with two necks and two heads sharing the same body. This fossilized reptile was tiny, only about 3 inches long. and it likely never made it far in life. But even in death, it tells a story that's both eerie and fascinating. Two-headed animals are rare even today, sometimes seen in snakes, turtles, or lizards. To find one frozen in time from the dinosaur age is almost like nature sending us a message that its experiments and mistakes have always been with us. Was this animal doomed from the moment it hatched? Probably. Swimming with two heads would not have been easy, especially when predators lurked in every shadow. Still, this fossil remains one of the most extraordinary windows into prehistoric life, showing us that the line between the ordinary and the bizarre has always been thin. And if a two-headed reptile can be found in the rocks of deep time, who knows what other strange secrets remain buried, waiting to be uncovered. Everyone's familiar with the iconic armored ankylosaur dinosaurs. Now imagine a 13-foot dinosaur waddling through the floodplains of North Africa, its body not only armored, but a fortress of bone and spikes. This was Spicamelus, after the earliest known ankylosaur, which lived around 165 million years ago during the Middle Jurassic period. Its discovery has rewritten the history of armored dinosaurs. In 2019, paleontologist Susanna Maidment stumbled upon a peculiar rib fossil in a Cambridge market. It was covered in spines fused directly into the bone, a feature unlike anything seen before. This led to Spicamelus being identified as a new species. Then, in 2023, a more complete skeleton was unearthed in Morocco's Middle Atlas Mountains, confirming that Spicamelus was indeed an ankylosaur and the oldest known one at that. What makes Spicamelus truly bizarre isn't just its size or age, but its armor. Unlike later ankylosaurs, which had compact, clubbed tails, Spicamelus sported a neck collar adorned with 3-foot-long spikes and shoulder plates. These weren't just for defense, they likely served as display structures, signaling dominance or attracting mates. The presence of fused tail vertebrae suggests that Spicamelus had a tail club, showing that ankylosaurs developed this weapon 30 million years earlier than previously thought. Even though these creatures are extinct, there are creatures that exist today that are just as strange and alien-looking. Take, for instance, the telescope fish. Far below the ocean's surface, where sunlight cannot reach, lurks one of the strangest fish alive today. It's called the telescope fish, and it looks like something dreamed up in a nightmare. Measuring around 6 inches long, this deep-sea predator has a body that seems ordinary at first glance, but once you see its head, you realize it's anything but ordinary. The telescope fish has tubular eyes that stick straight out of its skull like twin periscopes. These eyes are enormous compared to its body, and they point forward rather than to the side, which is unusual for most fish. They're designed to capture the faintest traces of light in the darkness of the deep sea, giving this creature an eerie, fixed stare. Its jaws are just as bizarre. The telescope fish has a mouth that can unhinge and open wide, much like a snake. This allows it to swallow prey nearly as large as itself, which is important in an environment where meals are rare. Its thin, silvery body is almost transparent, making it difficult for predators to spot as it drifts through the water column. It's been discovered that the telescope fish is able to roll its tubular eyes forward or upward, letting it scan both the depths below and the faint shimmer of the surface above. Combined with its expandable stomach and its ability to swallow large prey, this makes it one of the most effective hunters in the deep sea. Looking at the telescope fish is like staring into another world, a place where evolution twists creatures into forms that feel alien to us. It's a reminder that the oceans still hold secrets just as strange as anything from the age of the dinosaurs. The aptly named gulper eel is definitely an alien-looking creature. It has a huge mouth, much bigger than the rest of its body. The gulper eel's mouth is hinged, and it can open wide enough to swallow prey whole. It sounds brutal to be swallowed by such a creepy creature, However, it primarily feeds on fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. The gulper eel can grow to about 2 to 3 feet long, and when it encounters a threat, it can inflate itself like a big black balloon, thereby making itself look bigger and scarier. It eats by scooping its prey into its mouth and then squeezing the water out through its teeth and gills. The prey is surrounded by the gulper eel's elastic skin, pressed down the throat and swallowed whole and alive into its balloon-like stomach. If you thought that creature was strange looking, wait until you see the next one. This unimaginable creature is called the Headless Chicken Monster, and watching it swim with its weird webbed swimming fin and seeing a mouth on it like a sarlacc from Star Wars will certainly give anyone the creeps. While it does look like a creature you'd find on another planet, it's actually a species of swimming sea cucumber, and they all sport that deep red color you see. But that's not their outer skin at all. Its body is actually completely transparent, and what you're really seeing is its internal organs and skeletal structure. It can be found deep in the ocean at depths of 9,800 to 13,000 feet. However, encounters with this creature are extremely rare. It feeds by using its tentacles to collect and filter organic particles of dead plants and animals that fall to the ocean floor. But as creepy as it looks, the Headless Chicken Monster might not be the weirdest thing you'll find down here. In the murky depths of the ocean, an ancient predator lurks, the frilled shark. These scary-looking sharks have been spotted as deep as 5,150 feet. It has an ancient lineage dating back an estimated 80 million years. This means they were swimming around in the oceans when dinosaurs were still walking the earth. It can grow to about 7 feet long and gets its name from the frilly appearance of its gills. Although it's called a shark, these animals swim much like an eel. They mostly feed on squid and usually swallow their prey whole. And unlike most sharks, the frilled shark's jaw structure sets it apart from the others. Open its creepy mouth and you'll see 300 backward-facing needle-like teeth lined up in rows, which allows the frilled shark to trap and consume its prey very effectively. Once the prey is in its mouth, there's no coming out against those rows of teeth. It's probably not the most aggressive deep-sea animal, but there are some aggressive creatures down here that are very dangerous and should be avoided at all costs. This is the mantis shrimp, which has been around for a very long time, with a fossil record dating back some 400 million years. Not only do these vibrant colored creatures have the most advanced eyesight in the animal kingdom, able to recognize up to 12 primary color wavelengths compared to the 3 red, blue, and green wavelengths that humans can see, some of these prize fighters have club-like appendages that they use to bludgeon and smash their prey to pieces. And they have a super Mike Tyson knockout punch, to be sure. At just 6 inches long, they can strike at the speed equivalent to a .22 caliber bullet, enough to crack aquarium glass and shatter the shells of their prey. In a fraction of a second, the extreme pressure from their punch creates a cavitation bubble that boils the surrounding water and implodes into a ball of sound and light, creating temperatures so hot they reach 7,000 degrees Celsius, about the same temperature as the surface of the sun. Their punch is so devastating that it can literally knock the arms off its prey. There are many creatures that are called living fossils, and the vampire squid is another one of them. Scientists named this animal Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which means vampire squid from hell. However, that name is misleading because, for one, it's not a squid, and it's surely not a vampire. The vampire squid uses a pair of retractable, filamentous structures that extend well beyond the reach of its arms to capture what's known as marine snow, a term used to describe the shower of organic material that falls from upper layers of the water column to the deep sea, including dead plankton and other organic material. The vampire squid has a gelatinous body that is dark red or black in color. Its unique characteristic is its cloak-like webbing that connects its 8 arms, giving its vampire-like appearance. When threatened, it can invert this cloak, showing a larger, spiky appearance to ward off predators. It's been around for a long time, with fossil records indicating that its ancestors date back at least 300 million years, meaning the vampire squid is another creature that's outlasted dinosaurs and many other forms of life. While the vampire squid inhabits the abysmal depths, cloaked in black and thriving in the dark, it shares a surprising similarity with another remarkable creature from the sea. The Japanese spider crab is part of the group known as Brachyura, or true crabs, which originated during the Jurassic period, approximately 200 million years ago, and has adapted well to its environment. The Japanese spider crab holds the record for the longest leg span of any arthropod. When measured from claw to claw, these giant crabs can reach up to 12.5 feet. However, their bodies are only about 15 inches wide. Japanese spider crabs inhabit the depths of the Pacific Ocean around Japan, as their name suggests. They've been found as deep as 2,000 feet below sea level. Japanese spider crabs are omnivores and scavengers. Their diet consists of plants, algae, mollusks, and the carcasses of dead animals. Despite their monstrous appearance, Japanese spider crabs are known to have a gentle disposition. However, due to their size and habitat, you're probably not going to see one in a home aquarium. The oversized Japanese spider crab is certainly an interesting creature, but now it's time to take a look at a more ancient species of animal. The horseshoe crab has been around for more than 445 million years, long before the ages of dinosaurs, and it's still around today. This means that the mighty horseshoe crab has survived at least 4 of the Earth's biggest mass extinction events, including the devastating Chicxulub event that nearly wiped out all of the dinosaurs, and their physiology has remained largely unchanged, making them a living fossil. Researchers say it's because of the horseshoe crab's ability to eat just about anything they can catch. The horseshoe crab also has special copper-based blue blood that can coagulate around invading bacteria, thereby protecting the rest of the horseshoe crab's body from toxins. Despite their name, horseshoe crabs aren't really true crabs, or even crustaceans. These brackish water arthropods belong to the family Limulidae and are really chelicerates, which are more closely related to arachnids like spiders, scorpions, and ticks. But despite their scary-looking barbed shell, they're harmless to humans. It's hard to believe the horseshoe crab has been around so long, but there's another prehistoric deep-sea creature that beats it on the prehistoric timeline. Meet the chambered nautilus, an ancient deep-sea creature that has a fossil record dating back a whopping 500 million years. To put that in perspective, they were flourishing in the deep oceans 300 million years before the age of the dinosaurs. There are only 6 species of chambered nautilus, and they haven't changed much over time. Their shells are the most distinctive feature, which are spiral-shaped and divided into multiple chambers, hence the name chambered nautilus. As the nautilus grows, it creates new, larger chambers and moves to the outermost chamber. These creatures are scavengers that feed on dead fish and other organic detritus that sinks to the bottom of the ocean floor. It's got a sharp beak like an octopus and 90 tentacles. They can live up to 20 years, which is quite long for a cephalopod. Moving from the spiraled elegance of the chambered nautilus, we dive deeper into an unlikely underwater world to meet a less known but equally fascinating creature. Just one look at the yeti crab and you understand where it gets its name from. It's covered in what looks like silky, blonde, hair-like strands called setae. These features, reminiscent of the abominable snowman or yeti, make it one of the most unique-looking sea creatures. But the most incredible thing about the yeti crab is that they inhabit some of the most inhospitable places on Earth, in the deep sea near hydrothermal vents. These vents spew out superheated, mineral-rich water, creating an extreme environment that few organisms can tolerate. The other remarkable thing about these hardy creatures is how they eat. Those so-called hairs on their claws serve as a habitat for chemosynthetic bacteria, which convert the inorganic chemicals from the hydrothermal vents into organic matter through a process called chemosynthesis. The yeti crab farms these bacteria by waving its claws through the mineral-rich water, providing them with nutrients. In return, the crab consumes these bacteria, which helps it survive in a food-scarce environment. And while we're on the subject of crabs, this next one is really interesting, if not downright peculiar. This is the box crab, and like so many other creatures in the deep sea, he's a master of disguise and has a very bizarre mating ritual. The box crab grabs its mate and carries her around, and will even bury her to protect her. The much smaller female doesn't seem to mind what's going on, and he'll carry her around until she molts her shell. Not much more is known about this elusive sea creature other than they're very tasty, being a relative to the king crab. That is, if you're able to catch one at such depths in the ocean. But there's not just unique crabs and shrimp in the deep oceans, there's some strange versions of sharks and fish down there too. Meet the thing of nightmares, the goblin shark. One of the most striking features of the goblin shark is its distinct, bizarre appearance. It has a long, flattened snout, which gives it a goblin-like look, hence its name. Its jaws can protrude forward to catch prey, which is an adaptation seen in very few shark species. The goblin shark is often referred to as a living fossil, like many of these creatures, because it belongs to one of the oldest lineages of sharks. It's estimated to have been around for over 125 million years, making it a true relic from the past. Goblin sharks are primarily found in deep ocean waters, ranging from 1,000 to 4,000 feet below the surface. This habitat makes them extremely elusive, and as a result, they're rarely seen by humans. But deep beneath the ocean's surface, where sunlight scarcely reaches, live other creatures so otherworldly and unique that they're rarely seen by humans at all. Meet the giant oarfish, the longest bony fish in the world, with some growing from 33 to 56 feet in length. That's a big fish. Oarfish live in the deep sea, usually at depths of 650 to 3,280 feet, though they're occasionally seen at the surface, often when they're sick or injured. However, this brings us to a very strange thing about these creatures. According to Japanese legend, the oarfish are said to beach themselves before an earthquake or a tsunami, and are called messenger from the sea god's palace, though the scientific community remains skeptical of this claim, as there's no solid evidence linking the two phenomena. One of these rare creatures was just spotted recently in shallow water by a group of divers. There is still much we don't know about this elusive deep-sea fish. Speaking of things hiding away down deep, we can't forget about stingrays, and this one is definitely unique. As their name implies, deep-water stingrays are found in very deep parts of the ocean. They typically live in depths ranging from 660 to 6,600 feet. They're also known as six-gill stingrays because they have 6 pairs of gill slits on their undersides, while most other rays and sharks only have 5. Unlike many stingrays, which have broad, flattened bodies, deep-water stingrays have a more rounded or wedge-shaped body. This helps them move through the water in the deep sea. They possess a long, whip-like tail that can be several times the length of their body, and like other stingrays, some species also have a venomous barb near the base of their tail. Deep-water stingrays are carnivorous and feed primarily on small fish and invertebrates, using their strong jaws to crush their prey. And here's a surprising thing you might not have known. Like other stingrays, the female gives birth to live young. The deep-water stingray has also been around a very long time, with fossil evidence suggesting they first appeared around 420 million years ago. Take a look at what's been aptly named the sea spider. Sea spiders are fascinating creatures, but fear not, they're not true spiders belonging to the arachnid family, but belong to a separate class called Pycnogonidae in the phylum Arthropoda. The giant sea spider can reach leg spans of nearly 28 inches, although most species are much smaller. Despite their long legs, their bodies are quite small, often not much larger than the size of a human thumb. In fact, sea spiders have no abdomen, and their bodies are reduced and cylindrical. Their organs are stretched throughout their bodies, even into their legs, because their bodies are so small. One of the most incredible things about these delicate-looking creatures is that their lineage is quite old, with fossil records dating back to the Silurian period, around 430 million years ago. The ancient lineage of these creatures means they've also survived several mass extinction events. These creatures are generally carnivorous, feeding on jellyfish, sea anemones, sponges, and other soft-bodied invertebrates. They have a long proboscis like a mosquito that they use to suck nutrients out of their prey. We've been able to find a lot of rare animals down in the deep, but there are some that are so rare, some people think they don't exist or have become extinct. We're talking about the big fin squid. Sightings of big fin squids are extremely rare. Until recently, there had only been about a dozen confirmed sightings worldwide. In 2020, scientists reported the first ever sightings of big fin squids in Australian waters. They inhabit the deep sea, found at depths ranging from 3,280 to 15,500 feet. It sounds like a giant creature. However, it's in the same size group as the sea spider. The main body section itself is not very large and usually measures about 6 to 7 inches in length. The most incredible thing is that the big fin squid's arms and tentacles can be up to 20 times the length of their main body section, making their total length up to 26 feet long. These creatures are rare, and we don't know much more about them. However, that can change at any time. As we resurface from our incredible journey through the deep, leaving the world of giant crabs, ancient horseshoe crabs, mysterious squids, and elusive sharks behind, we're reminded of just how much remains unexplored in the depths of our planet's oceans. That said, if you'd like to see more amazing creatures of the deep, then let us know in the comments, and make sure to stay tuned here for more exciting videos about our planet and the amazing universe around us. Thanks for watching.